Hey, this is Pastor Ricky Temple. I'm glad to tell you about a new study we're doing. I love books. I love books, I love books, I love books. And there's a book called Boundaries. And in this book, it talks about boundary conflicts. It talks about family boundaries. It talks about single boundaries. It talks about all kind of great stuff. And it's great. And it's going to be a 3-part series that I'm doing just for you. So if you missed it and you've never read this book, you need to get it. And then you need to follow me along and let me talk about it with you. It's just fun. And it's with a bunch of other people. So it's not just me. We're going to Zoom in, Facebook Lives, all this good stuff. And you can see it. You can get there. And if you weren't there live, you can come in and watch it on demand and be inspired by it. It's all good stuff. So get the book, tune in, follow me along, 3 parts on boundaries. What are boundaries? What are some boundary conflicts? And how do you balance all that out? It's good stuff. 3 parts, don't you miss it. Please, please set these new boundary lines and watch it change your life. See you in the study.
We started with this sub-theme, when to say yes, how to say no to take control of your life. The book is divided, as I said, into 3 parts. Part 1, what are boundaries? Part 2, boundary conflicts. That's what we'll talk about today. And then part 3, developing healthy boundaries. I love the fact that he starts out by describing the whole issue of boundaries and how hard it is. And he talks about the potential solutions. You can go back and listen to part 1 for all of that information. He talked about great questions we can ponder. Can I set limits and still be a loving person? What are the legitimate boundaries? What if someone is upset or hurt by my boundaries? How do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy, or money? Why do I feel guilty or afraid when I consider setting boundaries? How do boundaries relate to mutual submission within marriage? That is such a good section. And are not boundaries selfish? Aren't you just being selfish because you won't give people your time? It's so easy to think that's the way you have to view life. And boy, I'll tell you, it's pretty powerful. Some good stuff in this book. So this is the next part that in chapter 2 we talked about last time. What does the boundary look like? I love the fact that you got the feet on the line. And the statement that he makes, excuse me, is so powerful, is that our soul is a boundary line that we control. Man, I mean, I can't, that alone just spoke to me, because in my soul, in my intellect, my emotions, and my inside of Ricky, there is a boundary line like around your house. And God gave me that boundary line. And there's another part earlier in the book, he talks about this, your skin being a boundary line, your words being a boundary line, your thoughts being a boundary line. And the fact that God gave me a boundary that I live in and nobody else can come in here without my permission. No one can know what I'm thinking without me telling you. Watch this. What was I thinking? See, you can't tell. Boundary. Nothing. I was just humming, nothing. But you wouldn't know that unless I told you. And God designed us like that. I thought that was so powerful. Then the next thing he talks about a lot, and he talks about this a lot in the book, what we are not responsible for. Does he spend a lot of time on that? Let me tell you, throughout the book, he comes back and forth to this issue. Galatians 2-5 is where we started last week in this topic. And it was so interesting because there are 2 Greek words, right? And this is the verse that says, basically, you are to bear your own burdens. And then it says you are to bear one another's burdens. And verse 2 of the verse, basically, that's a burden that you can carry. It's like a knapsack, the Greek word that's used beret there. Then in the Greek word fortion is the word that means cargo. So that's a burden in verse 5 of Galatians chapter 6 that's too heavy, where you need someone to help you with that, where you bear one another's burdens. So there's a responsibility in your life where you bear your own. There's seasons when you carry your own load, your own bills, your own life, your own issues. And there is times when someone has to come and help you. The problem is some people think that that's what God assigns everybody to do, is to help them, that people should live for them. There are people who join your church and they think their job is to somehow keep you busy. And so he goes through this whole wonderful thing about that. And then he talks about the benefits of boundaries. It helps your heart stay diligent. And it's just a really good section, chapter 2. And I love this. He says, boundaries are not walls that deny all entrance. Boundaries should not keep bad in and good out. just good stuff. So go back and read it if you missed it. Good stuff. Then we talked chapter 3, the boundary problem, controllers. These are people that don't respect boundaries. They're aggressive, some are manipulative, and we talked about that a lot. And the injuries that they can cause, people that just want to control your life. They want to find manipulative ways to manipulate you, control you like a puppet. Love this graphic. Next thing we talked about was how boundaries are developed. Boundaries start with families. And it's really important to understand that that's where you learn how to set boundaries. And in my opinion, a lot of times we don't teach people that well. We really don't. And if you understand that boundaries can be shaped by character and also by sinful behavior, a person can end up with bad boundaries because of a choice to just be a person who lives outside of the boundaries. And it's just difficult when you interact with somebody who refuses to live within boundaries. And that is just a phenomenal section. Now, this is where I want you to pay close attention to chapter 5 in the book. And I'm going to just walk through these. And there is an extensive conversation he has about each of these. And I could spend a lot of time here, but I'm not, because I made a lot of notes on this and I don't want to spend too much time here because it's so tempting. But let me just start talking about the part here where he says, here we go, the laws, the 10 laws of boundaries, the law of sowing and reaping, law of responsibility, power, respect, motivation, evaluation, proactivity, envy, activity, and exposure. And they pretty much are what they sound like. That there is a law that affects what you receive in life. It's called the law of sowing and reaping. And you set boundaries by sowing and reaping. What you do, and this is on page 87 in the book, by the way, page 87. And then if I just think that he makes a quote. He says, a guy named Jack, he uses as illustration. He does this a lot in the book. He'll tell stories about different people. And in this chapter, he talks about a guy named Jack. And he says basically that Jack does not feel obligated to change because his behavior is not causing him any pain. And he says confronting an irresponsible person is not painful to him, only consequences are. There's some people that will never change, and this is one of his big points, they will never change until they have a consequence, which gets into the second law, which is the law of responsibility. People have to feel a sense of responsibility. And then the law of power talks about the fact that they do have the power to change, that God's given them the power to change, but they have to have respect and they have to have the right motivation. And there are times when people just don't have those things in place. They're not respectful. They're not willing to use the power they have. And so he gets to this next big area, which is called the power of the law of evaluation. And on page 97, he talks about this one. He says, you need to evaluate the effect of setting boundaries and be responsible to the other person. Deciding to set boundaries is difficult because it requires decision-making and confrontation, which in turn may cause pain to someone you love. Speak truthfully to your neighbor. I love this. There's something about, there's two verses I want you to make note of. It's not in the book either, but one is Ephesians 4:25 and Ephesians 4:15. And both of them talk about motivating people, evaluating people with truth, sitting down and saying, the truth is this. And sometimes to set boundaries, you can't do that if you don't obey the law of evaluation. And he says in chapter 4, verse 25 of Ephesians, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor. Ephesians 4:15, which is not in the book, but it's a good verse to note. I love this verse. He says, speak the truth in love. Evaluation is really important. Honest evaluation. And then he says, you got to be proactive. You have to say it early, not late. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is letting things just linger. And so he talks about the law of proactivity. Then he talks about the law of envy, how some people just envy you. And he talks about the law of activity, getting in there and making it happen, and the law of exposure, exposing people to the truth. All 7 of these, 10 of these laws rather, are laws that impact boundaries. You establish boundaries, you put boundaries in place when you operate in these laws. And so sometimes it's hard, but this is just a practical, simple truth. But he's going to come back to these laws and apply them later. So keep these laws in mind. All right. Then in chapter 6, where we kind of ended last time, there are common boundary myths. Now, a myth is one of the definitions of a myth. He says is a fiction that looks like a truth. Now, there's a real powerful principle here about how you can end up believing things that are true. I see a lot of that today in this culture. We're in a very strange season where people are just believing things that just don't fit. And Christians have to be careful that they don't buy into things automatically because of who said it. They have to learn how to, back to the law of evaluation in the previous screen, where he said you got to evaluate things. So let me give you 6 myths that he talked about. First of all, the myth is if I set boundaries, I'm being selfish. That's a myth. Boundaries are a sign of disobedience. That's a myth. If I begin setting boundaries, I will be hurt by others. That's not a myth. That's a myth. If I set boundaries, I will hurt others. That's a myth. Boundaries mean that I am angry. It doesn't. Number 6, when others set boundaries, it injures me. Number 7, boundaries cause feelings of guilt. Number 8, boundaries are permanent, and I'm afraid of burning my bridges. Now, all of these are real. Now, I'm not saying they're not real. You can feel hurt. All that's true. But this is not healthy for you to accept as a norm. If you're not careful, you'll make some assumptions about boundaries and allow yourself to run from them. And so people can do anything in your life. You're not being selfish when you say, I don't have time. You're not being disobedient when you say, I can't come to that because I just don't have the time. You can set boundaries and still be a good person. And there are a lot of people who run from boundaries. There's no people can call anytime, day or night. You're obligated to go and help anybody who calls you. That's not a healthy way to live. And so we talked about that last time. Now in part 2, which is where we are today, we're going to cover boundaries in your family. I can't wait to get to that. Boundaries in your friends, boundaries and your spouse, boundaries and your children. Boy, there's a great section in here about children, especially adult children. I've got a hot book too. Tell you what, it's the book. I mean, hold on, don't go anywhere. I got my stuff all right here. And that's why I love digital books. I love digital books because digital books you can share. You cannot share books that are not digital. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here for just a second, look at your faces, and I want to talk about this because this is such a good book. This is a reference book. I'm giving you a lot of books to kind of, I love books. Books changed my life, okay? This is the book called Doing Life with Your Adult Children. And it's by a guy named Jim Burns. That book is fire. Fire on fire, smoke. And it is called Doing Life with Your Adult Children. If you don't get the book, but to read the first 2 chapters, it's worth it. Well, it really, I got thoughts about this guy in the first 2 chapters, but I think it's worth shocking you a little bit. The first, I give you a little hint. Ready? I don't know if I read this to you last week. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here you go. The first chapter in this book is called You're Fired. This is for parents of adult children. I love it. You're fired. The second chapter is this. This says, keep your mouth shut and the welcome mat out. Drop the mic. That's what your kids, if you're not careful, it really challenges you to engage them. But it also talks about, for example, let's see, what else? Why is it taking my kids so long to grow up? How to raise an entitled adult child. Interesting. A failure to launch. When your grown child violates your values, the high cost of money, in-laws, step families, and the blended family. Wow. It's party time with the grandkids. Now that chapter is wonderful. Okay. Anyway, so that's a side book. You know me, I got more for you folks. But let me get back to where I'm supposed to be because I'm getting happy here. So here we go. This is where we're headed. So let's get to it. We're going to work through this quick. Now, first of all, let me just say here, these are some kind of loose ends that I mentioned to you that I just kind of threw in from before, way back in the book that some of you may have missed. Remember in part one, loose ends, boundaries are anything that helps to differentiate you from someone else or shows where you begin and end. So here's some boundaries. This is where you begin and end. That's what a boundary is, right? Skin, words, truth. I love this. Geographical distance, time, other people, consequences. All those are boundaries. The most basic boundary that defines you is your physical skin, right? Words, the most basic boundary setting word, the most basic boundary setting word is the big word, no. You ever try that word? No. No, can I come? No, I can't make it. No, whoa, man, sorry, can't be there. Oh, wow, no. Wow, that would be so nice, but oh, I can't. Sorry, no, can't come. It's Diane's day. It's Monday. I can't do it. Sorry. No, man, no. I'll be on vacation that week. No, I'm so sorry. Powerful. Then truth. Truth is a boundary. When you tell the truth, this is the truth, this is a lie. You that's a boundary. Geographic distance is a boundary God put in place. When you sometimes moving away from people or staying away from people, the Bible said a lot about that. Come out from amongst them, be separate, saith the Lord. Sometimes that's the way you have to create boundaries around your life. Time, you have to say, oh, I can't. Oh, yeah, time's up, can't do that. Got to set a boundary. When I first started really emphasizing in our church the importance of ending and starting on time, it sounded legalistic. I used to tell the staff, listen, guys, church starts at this time. If you don't start it on time, I'm going to go up and start the service. And if I start the service, that means you didn't make it today. Time was really important to me. I realized that, today you'll be done 8 o'clock, you'll be out of here. I promise you. Time is a boundary. If you set boundaries, time boundaries, it helps you. I do this at this time. When I finish this today, I'm off. Time, other people. Get a support group if you need one. Other people can help set boundaries in your life. Sometimes you need other people in your life to help you build boundaries. Consequences, oh boy, don't they help you set boundaries? You say, I'll never do that again. Good stuff. That's just a review. If you missed the boundary book in the beginning, those are the early chapters, early words. So now that you're current with us, let's press on to the boundaries in your family. Woo, boy. Family is like a virus. They pass stuff to you. They give you sometimes good stuff, sometimes bad stuff. But I want you to see boundaries as a value. Now, I love the fact that he talks about something that the book I mentioned to you earlier, the one on let's see, this book I mentioned to you about family, the one, adult children. He talks a lot about this too, Jim Burns does, about this idea of the family of origin. And he has this whole section where he talks about, do you feel like the family of origin takes first place over you? And for some of you, that is a boundary issue. The family of your husband, your wife, or whoever, they are the main and you're like second fiddle. It's an interesting dynamic because you're trying to work through it, right? You're trying to get along with everybody. You're trying to love everybody. You're trying to be kind to everybody. But there's this thing going on, right? There's this sort of, you're not saying it. You really see it between in-laws and mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws and those people sometimes. Sometimes you see it between son-in-laws. You see this, there's this feeling going on. I know when I first got married to Diane, I thought, okay, am I first fiddle or second fiddle? I was really first fiddle. She did me well. But there were moments when I had to tell myself, this is her family of origin. They do love her. This is okay. And I think sometimes that tension can be powerful, but yet learning how to set boundaries so that those things don't conflict. So I love this conversation when he turns in the book and he talks about the lack of adulting in some families, so that, for example, you still are like the kid getting an allowance. He has a section called, May I Have an Allowance, Please? And the point is, you still have people looking for your socks. You still have people taking care of you financially. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me, because I do believe that there's a certain financial responsibility that we should share. I do believe that we should somehow be connected. I do believe that there is a value in that. As a matter of fact, to prove it, I put a verse there in front of you. It's Genesis 41, 57 through chapter 42. That's where Joseph and his brothers came to solve a common family financial challenge. They were running out of food. But it shows you that these guys who were well in their 40s and 50s were still working together. What I don't like is when families act like when you become an adult, get past 18, 19, 20, 21, you're not supposed to share wealth. You're not supposed to share together. You're not supposed to help each other. That somehow you're grown now, prove you're an adult. Don't ask for any help. Just go on your own. What he's talking about is where you have a dependent spirit, where you're not willing to try to grow. That's why he had the statement, may I have my allowance, please? This idea that someone's supposed to take care of me. I think we should work together, but you should feel that your life is your responsibility. This is your job, your rent, your lights, you should feel responsible for something that you as an adult must manage. And he talks about setting those boundaries for people. But I wanted to counterbalance that by pointing out that Joseph, who was around 39 years old when his brothers came to buy food in Egypt, he had been separated from his family since he was 17 years old. And so notice the brothers, though, who are older than Joseph, they're in their 40s, they're still hanging with each other. They're still solving common problems. I think families can work together and build wealth and be successful. And so I think the boundaries in your family don't have to mean you go on your own way, you go on your own way, and we don't even try to work together. I think that's how you impoverish a family. I think you need to learn how to work together. Then he talks about in chapter 7, this thing called family triangulation. And this whole idea of having these issues and strife issues, and everybody's fighting everybody, and everybody's in some kind of difficulty. I think this is a common problem. I have seen this over and over again. What I try to do as a pastor to avoid is triangulation, getting caught between people. And one of the things that happens when you get caught between people is there's no balance. And everything gets out of control, and everything kind of gets out of sync. And you end up with a person who is either acting like a child. You got brothers and sisters in strife. And he goes on and talks about the fact that all this drives conflict. So you end up with a family structure of strife and tension. And it's almost like all the family does is take in bad vibes, bad conversations, and it becomes this place that's toxic. And you end up with an aggressor. He calls this aggressor person shows up in the family, and they start dominating the conversations, dominating the room, and everything gets out of sync. And before you know it, it's a mess, a big mess, and the family's out of control. And that becomes the big issue. So I'm going to stop there for a minute. I'm going to talk about family and friends in just a second, but let me stop sharing for a minute. How many of you can relate to some of what we just talked about? Family triangulation, family strife, family tensions, family members that won't grow up, family members that you're taking responsibility for that maybe you shouldn't. And he strongly encourages you not to do that. He believes that's one of the ways you should apply the sowing and reaping principle. They should sow what they reap. They should be responsible. I want to take a moment, and maybe Ms. Bishop, we can answer a few questions about family. We're going to get to friends next, but let's take a minute or two and entertain a few questions about that. I've been talking for about 24 minutes or so here. So any questions about family? Any questions about what we've talked about so far, where it's difficult? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Family triangulation. It's always something going on all the time. Somebody got to save. Brenda, is that your hand up? You questioning
Yes.
What you want to say?
Family, it's been a few years. It's been too many years that my family has divided, and it divided because I won't say because, but when my mother passed, the matriarch, it seemed like all of a sudden, if you like this sister, you didn't like this brother, she said this, she said, it actually, instead of us seeming getting older, mature, and bonding, we kind of, it just, everything separated. And even still to this day, I don't know how to, I tried my way, and of course praying and everything, but I tried my way of trying to get everybody to come together, and nothing seems to work. And so you know, I'm at the point now where I said, what am I doing? It's like, you know, beating a dead horse, step away. Where do you go from here? What do you do? You know, and these are people I grew up with that I love. They're, you know, we shared so much, and it's just hard.
You know what's hard, Brenda, is seeing the harvest, because the parents do the best they can, families do the best they can sometimes, but they find out later on in life they didn't sow enough unity. They didn't talk about the hard issues. They didn't learn how to talk through issues. They learned how to exist. And that's one of the challenges with the family structure today. You're so busy, you don't have time to be family. You don't talk through offenses, and seasons go undealt with. And before you know it, you got people who got deep-seated issues. Death reveals a lot of that. I've seen it a lot in funerals where people are mad about stuff that, you know, you stole my truck when I was 2, you know, and I think if you study the family of Jacob, one of the most fascinating studies about his family, when, you know, you see Joseph being sold into slavery, but what you don't see is his father mediating strife. The Bible says that there was strife in chapter 37, right? But
Right.
Daddy never said anything. He never sat them down and said, hey guys, why is there all this tension in the house?
Right.
And a lot of times families have a culture that they haven't dealt with, and it just shows up in, and when the matriarch gone, or the person who the peacemaker is gone, an aggressor, like he mentions in this triangulation section, will rise up and start, you know, they're not trying to be difficult, they just are.
Yeah.
And they've never been trained not to be difficult.
Okay.
I think it was really important for me to train my kids not to fight each other and to intervene and help them learn how to negotiate. And they also learned watching us negotiate. So if Diane and I are kung fu and cussing, they kung fu and cuss each other.
Okay.
And if we ignore stuff, and I'm not saying that anything was done wrong intentionally, I'm just saying the fruit is the fruit.
Yeah.
You know? And we've all seen it in our families.
Yeah.
Somebody else have a question before I go to friends about this section on family.
We did have a comment, Pastor, to Brenda's excerpt there, that, boy, Brenda, I understand that. And someone else said that happened with my brother and I when Dad passed away in 2009. Still to this day, he has not said more than 3 words to us. So apparently there are others that Brenda's point resonates with.
It does. It's powerful. All right, let's keep going. Friends are amazing. Chapter 8, boundaries in your friends. I love this definition. Friendship defined. In this discussion of boundaries, we define friendship as a non-romantic relationship. That's important. That is attachment-based rather than function-based. We're looking not at we're looking not at relationships based on a common task like work or ministry, but friendship in which people simply want to be together. Oh, I love that. I've got those kind of friends. And I think it's fun to say my friends go to church, but that's not what God really had in mind necessarily. That your friends are the people you work with or the people that you go to church with. I mean, that's nice, but who are your friends? I mean, your friends outside of work, outside of a specific task. Who are the people you can call and just chat with? That's what you have in common. Now, I love the fact that in talking about friends, he talks about conflicts and how they can be resolved with friends. And I love these categories. Compliant. These are friends that are basically trying to get along. They're basically trying to, well, you go first. No, you go first. Well, you go first. No, you go first. And then he gives this great story of how in one of these stories, the person didn't want to go on a trip, but they went. Matter of fact, the person even suggested it. And it went something like this, I'm paraphrasing. Let's go to the beach. And the friend said, okay, let's go to the beach. And so they go to the beach and they both hate it. And the friend said, well, I didn't want to come anyway. And the friend said, well, I suggested it because of you. Everybody's trying to kind of make everybody happy. Everybody's trying to be compliant. And what ends up happening is you lie to each other. You're not really being truthful. Good friendships are built on truth. It's not just by being compliant. If you don't like something, you're not helping your friend by just letting them come over and stay for 4 hours when you don't need to. When that doesn't work for you. I had a friend, and I had a friend, this is a true story. I'm gonna stop. I had a friend, he used to come over to my house and take his shoes off. And it was, oh my God, it light up the whole house. I said, oh man, you can't take your shoes off, bro. I'm sorry. And he what's wrong, man? You gotta love me as I am. I love you with your shoes on. And there are moments when you're trying to be compliant, you're trying to go someplace you don't really want to go. And that's what I love about the book. He says, don't go. Just tell them you don't want to go. Don't lie to them. It's just too cool. Anyway, compliant. I love that. It's a great section. Good stuff. All right, here we go. Next one is aggressive controller. This is a friend who's always trying to tell you what to do and boss you around, control your life. Then compliant manipulative. Oh my goodness, you're always trying to maneuver me and make me feel guilty. And you're my friend, you would do this and you would do that. And I lost a friend or two because I wouldn't. And I won't give examples because they may be listening. But people manipulate you. And I've seen this a lot in some believers in helping with benevolence. I've seen a lot of Christians just really not understand. I mean, I believe in helping people. I'm a big generous person. Maybe that's one of my greatest weaknesses is generosity. And it's one of my strengths and weaknesses. But I think there are moments when you try to take over somebody's life and you're being manipulated. You're trying to, they need to maybe lose the car. You don't need to save the car. Every time they car payments due, they're calling you. Well, maybe they should catch the bus. You don't die on the bus. Jesus didn't have a car. I'm not against you keeping your car, but I can't make your car payment for you every month. That's the kind of thing this book says. Don't do it. Not indefinitely. There's something about helping a person, but there has to come a moment when you say, is this now becoming manipulation? Then number 4, conflict. 4 is compliant, non-responsive. Oh boy, we've all seen that. Just don't respond. You won't do right. Now, I like the fact that he swings this for singles a little bit. And I think a lot of single people need to reevaluate their friendships and say, is this manipulative? Am I being compliant? What exactly am I doing? And sometimes you're in a friendship that's not really a friendship. And I like the fact that he asks questions like, aren't friendships easily broken? How can I set boundaries in romantic relationships? That's a big one for singles. How can I set boundaries? Is all my friendships end up leaning into some kind of romantic something? What if my closest friends are my family? Now, this was surprising. I put the page number because it was powerful. On page 115 and 116, he says he believes your family of origin should not be your only close friends. I want to stop there.
I'm not sure I understand.
I know you don't. Sorry, stop talking. I'm talking. Now, excuse my computer. How can, let's make sure that doesn't happen again. How can that be true? I want to stop there and talk about that. Because he says this, he doesn't believe that you're friends. He believes that God never intended for that to be your only place of friendship, your family. So let's stop. And I want to just get your feelings about that for a minute. So what do you thoughts about that before we get to the spouse part, the really juicy part? Tell me about that. Why shouldn't it be just your family? I'm waiting on you.
So
Go for it, Sherry.
Hello. So I think you have to have, it's almost like just creating a culture for yourself. If it's only your family, then you're only going to really believe one way, I think. I think, having friends outside of family will help you, diversify your culture, your thoughts, what you know, what you learn. I think I feel 100% about what he's saying, that they shouldn't just be your family. because really you can manipulate your own family.
I agree. Anybody else want to comment on that? Anybody else? Any other thoughts about that?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I've been reading the book, and from what I'm learning, it's really eye-opening to me, because when reading the book, you understand that a lot of things that go on in your household as a kid are not normal necessarily. And so when you start interacting with other people and seeing how other people, think and how they grew up, you start to see the flaws in what you learned. And so if you only deal with your family, you kind of stay messed up.
Well said, my friend. Let's see. Anybody else? I think that's fascinating. Marriage does that. Meeting different people. I try to have a broad range of friends. I believe in having friends that are Americans. I really believe in having friends that are not Americans. I believe in having friends that are totally different in their cultural upbringing. I believe in having white friends, black friends, short friends, heavy friends, light friends, grumpy friends. I have a lot of different kind of friends, and I can't relate to them all the same way. And I use the word friend kind of loosely here a little bit, but I do think the point is, sometimes I've been saying this all day, your mind can't go there. God wants to get you from here to here, but you can't go there because your brain doesn't go there. There's some things you won't think about until you are around certain people. If you're around people who read, they'll inspire you to read. If you're around people who make money and who invest, you'll start thinking about investing. Sometimes where you are in life is tied to your friendships. That's the issue. God had to take Moses to put him around Jethro to get him ready for his leadership. There's something about mentorship that changes everything in your life. And that's why your church is important, your friends are important, and all those good things. So having said that, I'm going to turn now to the other part of this study, which is so good. It's on spouses. The challenging boundaries of marriage. Now, single people, don't tune out. This is good stuff. You're going to love it. You're going to like it. I promise you. If there ever were a relationship where boundaries could get confused, it is marriage. That is so true, because living together with somebody, sharing life, and those of you that have been divorced and through this, you understand it's true. The crossing of boundaries in marriage, and I mean, there are feelings involved, desires involved, limits on what I can give to a person. And these three areas are really important, because what he basically says in this section is you've got to think about how you feel. It's not just how the person feels. And then he has this great comment he makes about desires, that I'm not responsible for the desires of every person that I'm with. And I'm going to read a couple of quotes here. He says on page 153, he says, the problem arises when one trespasses on another's personhood and tries to control the feelings, attitudes, and behavior, choices, and values of the other. Now that is amazing. When you cross over into their personhood. So Diane is Diane, but I cross over and try to make her Ricky. I create great problems. He says and then under feelings, he says, one of the most, this is on page 154, one of the most important elements that promotes intimacy between two people is the ability of each to take responsibility for his or her own feelings. In other words, I'm not responsible for how you feel about something. So I don't need to disqualify how you feel, but I'm not responsible because that bothers you. I mean, I may need to stop doing it, but let's be clear. The way you feel about the beach, if you feel bad about it, I'm not responsible for that feeling. That's what he basically says. And somehow we try to make people responsible for our feelings. And those are your feelings. And I just think that was amazing. He said, if you think your anger is her problem and that she needs to fix it, you may be waiting for years, because Those are your feelings. Those things make you angry. And I had to really work on that because I thought if I was angry about something, Diane should be angry about it. I thought if I felt some way, Diane should feel that way. If I desired something, Diane should desire it. And let me tell you, it can get into your intimate life. You know, you're interested in intimacy, they're not. You know, okay, so why aren't you interested? You should be interested because I'm interested. You know, I think people are in different spaces at different times. And I'd say more about that if it was another setting, but we'll stop there. I love this Bob and Nancy story. I thought that was just absolutely phenomenal. And you can read that on your own. Just Google it, search for Bob and Nancy. There's this great exchange between them about feelings and thoughts. And I'll read a little bit of it. It's on page 158. It says, Bob had this problem. His wife, Nancy, wanted the perfect home, including a new patio, fresh landscaping, and remodeling master bathroom. She was always coming up with something for him to do around the house. So the author goes through this whole exchange, and he goes to this counselor, and he says, what do you do when she wants all of this? That's what he asked the counselor. And the counselor basically said, just say no, basically. He basically said, that's not your responsibility to fulfill all of her desires regarding the house. Now I want to stop right there for a second. I want to stop right there. I'm looking and see who saw that. Let me see. Okay, I'm looking at faces. He said, it's not my responsibility. And let me read exactly what he said. This is so powerful. Because she wants so much, I can't find any time for myself, Bob said. What do you mean you can't? The counselor said. Don't you mean won't? No, I can't, he responded. She would be angry if I didn't do the work. Well, he said, this is the counselor, that's her problem. It's her anger. That's her feeling. What he's basically saying is, he says, in this moment, it was this exchange that just was amazing. He said, yes, but I have to listen to it. I have to listen to what she says. He said, no, you don't. You're choosing to do all of these things for her. And you're choosing to take the tongue lashing that happens if you don't. Anytime you spend doing things for her is a gift from you. If you do not want to give it, you don't have to. Stop blaming her for all of this. Bob didn't like that. He wanted her to stop wanting instead of learning to say no. He's trying to change what she wants. And he says, no, you're wrong. It's okay for her to want all this fixed, but you can't fix it all today. I'm telling you, when you get into this book, this guy starts drawing some real boundaries. And he says, no, it's not your job. He says, give her 4 hours a week of things you're going to fix. And then if anything else you want fixed, if you read the book, he says, page 158 to 159, read it, 158 to 159. He says, you tell her to save some money, hire a contractor. It's incredible. I thought, woo. You know what I said when I read this? That sounds like Diane. This is Diane. You want to know Diane Temple? That's how she thinks. She says, I'm not going to put all that on you. If I want some things, I'll pay for it myself. And let me tell you, she got some stuff right now. She's paying for it. She jumped in there herself. I jumped in to help out because I'm a nice guy. But she doesn't believe in putting stuff on me and saying, you know, Ricky's got to do this all the time and clean up all the time. Even though living with me is like living with a maid. I'm telling you now, I clean and wash all the time. Sometimes I stand by Diane and say, Diane, you finished with that sock yet? I'm going to wash it. I'm washing clothes. Give me that sock. And she said, you need to get something else to do. You need to get you something to do. I stood by the other day and she had some water. I said, you finished with that? I'm going to throw it away. I'm waiting for you to drink it down. She said, you need to get a life. You just need to get a life. Come here, bugging me. So anyway, but no, Diane, that's got nothing to do with anything. Just fun to say. So it's really powerful in the book when he starts talking about this, because he talks about it in a way that's powerful. Now I want to close out here because I got to get done and answer a few more questions real quick. But let me show you what else he says. So if you notice in his conversation, he says, feelings, desires, and limits on what I can give. that there are times you can't. And that Bob and Nancy example is powerful. And then he says, what you have to do in these situations in life is apply the law of boundaries to marriage, the law of sowing, responsibility, power, evaluation. He said, remember, love and limits go together. Love and limits, like that. Love and limits go together. It's not all about you, sister. It's not all about him, brother. It's not all about the children. It's not all about the parents. Love and limits go together. There's some things I should do, and there's some things I shouldn't do. Powerful stuff. And so keep reading. You'll love it all. Chapter 9, boundaries in your spouse. But then he says, but that doesn't sound like being a submitted wife. I love that conversation. And he basically says, you know, women struggle with this, especially Christian women. Oh, Bible says submit, and I can't say no. I think there's a boundary you have a right to draw, but you got to be fair. And some of you are going to take this and become grumpy. I hope not. Because when I read it, I got a little bit nervous because, you know, he's basically saying you can speak up, draw a boundary. And I love the fact that in the story of Paul and Meredith, which I'm not going to read, he basically addresses that whole idea of you speaking up and saying something and taking charge of your life and doing it in a graceful way. It's just a great, great illustration. Then he says some resolution is taking inventory, sitting back, looking at your relationship, your marriage, identify the symptoms of problems, identify the conflict issues, identify the need that drives these conflicts. What is the need in the person that's driving this tension? Take in and receive the good, practice boundary skills, say no to the bad, forgive the aggressor. Sometimes a person was out of sync, out of line. You're gonna have to forgive them. The guy was too aggressive. Maybe the woman was, and respond, don't react. I love that. Respond, just don't react to things. And learn to love in freedom and responsibility, not guilt, because you can be guilty and never get anywhere. Chapter 10. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because they're too detailed. Chapter 10 talks about boundaries in your children. I'm going to give you one piece of advice regarding your children. Be present, consistent, and fair. That's what I want you to do. 3 things. Be present. And I think a lot of parents aren't present. You're always busy. Always busy, consistent, and fair. My little grandbaby, you know, grandchildren do something to you that nobody else does, right? So she'll come in my office here and she'll say, Pop, are you busy? Are you busy? Are you like really busy? And I vow to say no. 99% of the time I'm trying to say no. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. And she'll say, can we watch some funny videos? And I said, sure we can. And we can do it for 30 minutes. And we'll watch funny videos. And she'll laugh and scream. There's something about being present, not just in the room, but present and being consistent. I'm trying to give a consistent yes. I try to do that with my family. But there are boundaries to that, of course, right? And I want to be fair. Then he talks in chapter 11 about boundaries in your work. So there's some areas you should read, and it's broad, and he goes through a lot of discussion. We can't read it all. And then I want to know, what are your questions about boundaries at work? Well, let me give you one boundary at work. There's a book called Dying for a Paycheck. I want you to buy it. It's called Dying for a Paycheck. Write it down. Dying for a Paycheck. Don't die for a paycheck. Draw some boundaries. I've done that because I'm not a 24-hour pastor. I refuse to be that. Trust me. I plan to live. Read that chapter. Chapter 12, boundaries and the digital age. Do I need to say anything? Do I need to, how about this? Let's watch this. This is you all day, all day, all day. You have to learn to give it boundaries. I don't cut the television on early in the morning. I try not to watch it late at night. I try to have I only watch it for certain hours, certain days, because my mind is too full of digital. I'm watching myself develop some bad habits of anytime I'm free, I'm always on a digital device. And I'm trying to learn to think. I pray without anything on. I want to just learn to talk to God. So the question is, do you take full advantage of the digital tools? I hope you do, because I believe in them. I have all of them, but make sure you set boundaries in place. Chapter 13, boundaries in yourself. I love this. And again, read, there's a lot that applies to you. The question is, how are you managing your sexual life when it comes to boundaries for yourself? And I am going to come back to this on next week and pick up here, because there's a lot I can say about sexuality and sex and all that stuff, substance abuse. These are biggies we'll come back to next week and talk about in more detail, because setting boundaries for yourself is really, really important. Then there's boundaries, and God, I love this in chapter 14. God expects his boundaries to be respected as well. I love this. We always think about boundaries for other people, but God establishes boundaries. He says, I'm holy, be ye holy, for the Lord your God is holy. When he makes choices or says no to us, referring to God now, that is God's right. That's his right, his freedom. If we are to have a real relationship with God, with him, we need to respect that freedom. When we try and put him into binds where he has to do something, we are testing his freedom. When we're angry with him for what he does not do, we are not allowing him the freedom to be who he is. I really think people are trying to tell God what to do. I have some strong views, and I'll talk about this one next week when I'll talk about sex. And if I, and this is true, if I counsel 10 people who are single, they are, at least 8 of them are sexually active. God draws boundaries on sex that we don't like. So we'll talk about that next week, and it'll be fun. It'll be a fun conversation. God doesn't like certain behaviors. And he says, if you do them, I'm not going to be with you. I won't hang around you. There are things that he calls holy and unholy. And he talks about being separate. And God, I believe that God leaves certain people. His presence leaves them. He draws a boundary. And that's God's right. And God expects his boundaries to be respected. I love that graphic. And so next week, we're going to pick up on that and a little bit more. And we'll talk about healthy boundaries in our third section. So I'm going to take about 6 minutes here and entertain a few questions you may have about what I've said, anything at all. This book has 300 and some pages. I have taken on 100 pages per session, thereabout. So it's a summary, people. The handbook does a little bit more summary for you with more questions, if you'd like to buy that. But let me entertain questions you may have about boundaries before we get done here today. Any questions? Raise your hand, shake your head, spin yourself around.
Pastor Rick, I do have a question.
Sure.
What do you do when others that you love and care about don't really set boundaries for themselves and it causes you pain? What are some things that you've done to help you with that? And then after that, Yosetta does have a question.
He basically said in the book, basically tell them, stop them. Don't let that continue. And that may mean you have to separate yourself. It may mean you have to change the nature of the relationship. But you can't let people continue to do that. The law of responsibility that he talks about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Yosetta has a question.
Go for it, Yosetta. How are you?
Hi, Pastor Rick. My cousin invited me here, and I just thank God for being a part of the group. It has been very informative. I've always grew up as a passive person, and then it went to passive aggressive to get them off of me. And then, learning techniques of, last month I went through consecration, and it was the biggest thing of you have to set boundaries in order to be able to maneuver the way I want you to, God telling me that I have to set boundaries in order to maneuver the way he wants me to. So I thank God for my cousin sharing this with me tonight, because it just confirms, the right track. And I'm definitely going to get the book. And I think that the other book you said, Doing Life with Adult Children.
Yeah.
Can you believe I got an adult child now? Wow.
Let me say this. It comes fast. Let me say this to you. The only thing is just be nice. It's okay to set boundaries, but you don't want to be alone where people are afraid of you or are intimidated, because sometimes when people frustrate you, and I see a lot of preachers do this, they're really intimidated by the crowd. and they don't express it well. They yell at people, they fuss because they're emotionally overwhelmed. Preaching is emotional. Getting in front of people is emotional. And so just make sure you're not grumpy. Make sure you're nice. Smile, be happy.
I've been doing that.
Good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I draw boundaries, but I try, like, there's certain things I don't do. I don't make people feel like they're a bother. I try to make them feel like, it's all good. Come on, let's talk. But yet I separate myself enough so that I feel okay. So draw the boundaries, but be nice. Make sure you're because what can happen is you in the effort to separate yourself and draw the boundaries, you can become frustrated yourself. And I fight that all the time. I'm fighting it all the time.
Yeah.
So, but I like people, so I'm more of a people person. But and if you're an introvert, it can be even harder in some ways. It really can.
We have a question from the triplets.
What's the question? Last one.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? How, Pastor? I got a question in regards to setting boundaries. When setting a boundary, should you tell someone that no, or should you tell them like, no, you're going past my boundary? Or should you just keep the boundaries to yourself? You know what I'm saying? Or should you just use the word no, or,
I think you have to say no. I say no in a nice way. People ask me to speak. I say, no, I can't do it right now. I'm on a Sabbath. Or I can't do it. But, it's how you say it. It's how you engage people. A lot of times, like I was telling, Sister Eden, you said there are moments when you're trying to set a boundary. But if I'm not careful, like with children, you can say, for the kid wants to come here and talk to you, listen, I'm busy. Don't come in here. I'm busy. That's one way you can do it. Or you can say, come here, baby. What you want? All right, let Pop finish. Let Daddy finish this. And I promise you, in 30 minutes, I'll hang out with you. It's a way you do it. It's sometimes just don't answer the phone if you know you can't talk. Let it go to voicemail. Just send a message. I'll get back with you. It's how you do it. Speaking the truth in love, key statement. That's how you do it. Hope that helps, okay?
We also have, I'm sorry. We also have a book plug by Jackie and Marcus Watson. Desiring God by John Piper also goes into the importance of understanding God's boundaries. It's a really great book for readers, and John Piper is awesome anyway. And then Miriam Munn has a question. What about when your boundaries are not respected on a consistent basis? Can you address that?
All right, this is, and I'll leave my next questions for the hang-arounders, okay? Because it's 8 o'clock, because I'm a man of time, but I'll stay on as long as you want to ask me questions, but I'll pray. But this is the last one for this before I pray for the break. And then again, the hang-arounders can stay with me. Now, say it again one more time.
What about when your boundaries are not respected on a consistent basis?
Okay, when they're not respected on a consistent basis. Well, you have to negotiate a way to fix that. And that could be one of those big boy, big girl conversations. It's difficult in marriage. It's difficult when you're working together. It's difficult if you're partners in a business. And you may have to really renegotiate all of that. And that's one of the things I'm interested in his approach in the book. He means it. And I think part of the problem sometimes is we don't mean it. I mean that certain days I'm off. I mean that there are days when I have to get my studies done. My work has to be done. I don't like studying for sermons the day before. God help me, Jesus. Whew, terrible life. If you're a school teacher, a professor, right? Marina, you get this one, right? Doing lesson plans at the last minute. Oh, right before class, you're going in trying to read chapter 2. You got to teach. It's terrible. It's awful. The kids can tell you don't know what you're talking about. So I think renegotiating, I say that a lot, renegotiating it and meaning it. I really mean this. The problem is we're oftentimes lying. We don't mean it. That's why your boundaries never get set, because you don't mean it. It's when you mean it that you change everything. Spending habits, eating habits. If you can look in the mirror and say, you're lying again to yourself. You're lying again. You lying. You ain't going over there to pray with that man. That's not a prayer meeting. You know what that is. Okay? So don't go, because you know what's going to happen. There ain't going to be no prayer, and you're not going to remember any Bible verses over there. So don't go. You're lying to yourself. You're going to take a drink, you need to put that down. You know what's going to happen because you know you like it too much. You love it. You got to be honest. You love to fight. You love to fight. You want to duke it out. You got to learn to tell the truth about yourself. And when you do that, you know, you like to dominate people. I don't know, whatever it is. And so I think those boundaries will always be broken until people say, no, I mean this. So that is Sheila.
Oh, well, actually, we have two, I think these may be quick ones.
Okay.
Carolyn says, I feel like I'm having battle fatigue. With all of the multiple deaths, dying, and family matters, what are your thoughts?
Girl, I'm gonna tell you something. You think you feel it. I know I feel it. I had two, I got bad today. I was dealing with stuff today. Ain't that right, Sheree? Right? Brother be working through it now. I be trying. Woo, Lord Jesus. Stuff I have to manage. So I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and then how do you respond to boundary abuse? That's Sandra would like to know that.
Well, first of all, let me make sure I answer the first one. Let me say this. You have to learn to turn the page. You have to learn to say, I'm not responsible for that. One of the great things in this book is he says, I'm not responsible for that. I have a way I say it, I can't own that. I can't own your consequences. I can't own the seed you sown. That's your responsibility to own that. So I turn the page. When people, the death and the loss, I pray for them, I pray for their families, and I move on. I have to. I can't live there, or I'm going to die with them, and that doesn't help anybody. I have to put the mask on myself first, like on the plane, or we're going to all die together. You know, that's why they tell you to do that. Because if you don't put the mask on your child, and then you pass out, then the child said, what's wrong with you, mama? Then they pass out, everybody dead. Put the mask on yourself, then put it on somebody else. So that's what I do. The second question was what again, Sheila? It was a question, how do you respond to boundary abuse? And it's a question from Sandra D. And Sandra says that she'd like to unmute to explain. Go ahead, Sandra.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So I have a question about when I say
that's Sandra Demetrius.
That is. Hey, Sandra.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
It's okay. But yeah, so I had a question about boundary because I feel like I have someone who read the book and the boundaries book, and they were like, oh, I get it now. And they have this revelation. And so they're using boundaries to me personally, as an excuse to not do the right thing. And so I know that I can't, that's their boundary. They set it. And so I still have to respect the boundary, even though I feel like the motive isn't necessarily right. And I see how it affects somebody else. And so, they're setting this boundary and I see how it's hurting somebody else. And I know that, the motive isn't right, but, they're using this book as an excuse to set this boundary instead of actually dealing with the issue. So how would the person respond, like the person that I see who's getting hurt by it? They feel like they can't really do anything about it, the boundary's set. So how do they respond, like, without feeling like they can't do anything about it?
Do you remember that word I used earlier called triangulation, that they get you in these triangles? You have to kind of let them work that out and say, that's that person's responsibility to say, no, I can't let you abuse me in this way. That's their job. I have to be careful when I'm a third person looking in that I feel responsible to fix their problem. They're grown, they're mature, they know, they said it hurts them, let them tell that person, and then let them decide how they're going to respond to it. Don't own it. Because if you start owning it, you get into that triangulation stuff. And it really is a problem when you can't let people, as a pastor, I have to be really careful about this. I cannot fix issues that people don't want fixed. If they ask me my advice, I can help them. But as far as getting in the triangle with them and feeling like I'm now a part of the fight and we all fighting each other, no, and that can really happen between husbands and wives and pastors. You're trying to help this one, you're trying to help that one there, and then you get caught in the middle. So I think, you advise them the best you can if you're asked, and then sometimes all you can do is watch the movie.
Yeah.
What I say. I mean, that's all I can do. Watch the movie, get some popcorn. Say, ooh, this is gonna be painful.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds horrible, but
Yep.
imagine I have 2,800 members. I cannot get in every fight. I cannot. I just, and I don't. They'll tell you. They call me talking about they fighting. You better call 911. I can't come over there. I'm not doing any karate today. You need to call 911. I'm not coming. And you do your best. I care, but I cannot. Here's what I can't do. I can't sow a good harvest for my life and spend my life living in your bad harvest. Now that's a word. You got to preach that. I'm not going to live in your bad harvest because I didn't do that. My wife loves me. She liked me. We get along. And I work on that. So you need to work on your life. So that's what I would say, my friend. I hope that helps, Andrew. Good to hear your voice too.
Thank you. Yeah, and it did. It did help. Thank you.
Sandy used to work for us. She was a media. She's an incredible editor, incredible media person. She's phenomenal, smart, gifted, well-educated, and all that good stuff. And she's just nice people. So we love you. She moved on to something else. We miss you. All right. Anybody else before I go? Hang arounders.
I don't know if I mentioned Miriam's. She said, at this point, I need boundaries for the boundaries. And I think that's all the comments.
Boundaries. I'm telling you, this study is one that can really lift your life. Imagine being able to put those lines around your life and saying, I'm clear about what a boundary is. For some of you, this is a new moment. You now know I have the right to draw a line around my life. Man, it's just right. Now, I want to pray for you. And I want you to just take this moment, breathe it in. Let's pray. Father, let them be open to boundaries. Let it be a transforming moment for them. May they never be the same. May they embrace this moment, embrace this definition of what a boundary is, and may they say, this is my new choice. This is my new decision for my future. In your name we pray, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Wow, what a great thing. I'll see you next time. We got more to talk about boundary conflicts, more things to help you understand how to deal with boundaries. But all that comes up next time. So see you next time. God bless. And remember, come on, live in the boundary. It's okay.